Well, thank you, and I think Barbara had to leave, and I'm going to have to cut this short. I think some of you may want to come to the hearing that on RFS that I will be chairing in about 20 minutes, if you have nothing else to do, and you might find it interesting. And I really, it's funny. People wonder about Barbara and me. You know, when they give profiles, every year, I'm always, when they say who are the three most conservative and three most liberal members of the United States Senate, I'm always in the three most conservative members. She's always in the three most liberal members. She's a proud liberal, not a hypocrite like a lot of my Democrat friends who they follow this pattern of, vote liberal and press release conservative. Not Barbara. She votes liberal and she press releases liberal. So I'm very proud of her. She's very honest about that, and it is fun. We have a good time. I remember I just cut a tape where I told a story, and I wouldn't tell this if she were still here because I want it to be a surprise to her, so don't ruin it. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was before people caught on, they're talking about global warming and all this stuff, and she and I used to have some ferocious debates. And I remember one was Larry King. And Larry King, at that time, he was the number one show out there. And so she and I went on, and she showed up with her entourage at the studio and went in the green room. They all started working her over. And I went with one guy, and we watched this take place. After a while, Larry King came on and said, we're 5 minutes away, and it's fine. We'll do that. And they saved the best to last. I mean, her hair was just ravishing. I mean, every hair was in place. I mean, she had enough hairspray that would have painted an M1 tank, and she was just walking out, and all of her team was there. And just before we sat down, I said, "Barbie, your hair looks really nice," and I messed the whole thing up. And then somebody else. What was the other hair story? I know what it is. Every once in a while, Barbara, she will talk about. We have a real love for each other. We really do. You never know it, because when we talk about the overregulation that's putting everybody out of business in America, and she and I really do fight. And when she's gotten to know me pretty well, and I've gotten to know her pretty well, and I know when she's about to explode, because her lower lip starts quivering. And we were in one real emotional issue one time in a live committee hearing, having to do with some of the overregulation of the EPA. And I could tell it was just about to come. And just as she was getting fired up and started to shake, and the lower lip was going, I slid a little note under. I said, "Your hair looks very nice today." Well, anyway, we have that kind of relationship where we really do get along. And people don't know how we do it because we disagree on almost everything except infrastructure. And so anyway, that's what's kind of funny. I do want to mention a couple of people here today. We have Mike Patterson and Tim Gantz. They both came through the ranks with Gary Ridley, who has probably testified before my committee more than anyone else in the history of the Senate, and does a great job and is well known far beyond. That gives you something to strive for there, Mike. And I agree with Barbara when she talks about when she first came here. We came here, I think she came to the House a year before I did. And I came to the House, and at that time, no one ever dreamed that Republicans would be a majority. We're always going to be a minority. And so some of you have been around for a while. Remember John Paul Hammerschmidt from Arkansas? He was the most powerful Republican because he got along with everyone, and he was in this thing, the T&R committee, which deals with things that we're supposed to be doing. There's an old beat-up document that nobody reads anymore. It's called a Constitution. And it tells you what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be, number one, defending America. Number two, roads and bridges. That's what it is. Article 1, Section 8. Look it up. And so I've always felt strong. The other position that I have is on the Armed Services Committee, where I was ranking member. And right now, what this president has done to the military is pretty shameful. And we're going to try to turn this thing around. But what we did way back there in the House days, we had a problem. You know what that problem was? Our problem was we had too much money in the Highway Trust Fund. And then you know what has happened and caused that to deteriorate, and you know where we are today, and so we're going to have to do something. And I want to share just something with you, because Barbara covered pretty well all the things that I I have my notes here. I've got Sean and Alex back here. Hold your hands up. Most of you who are working with us, and certainly Jim Timon and Bud Wright spent hours and hours with them, really worked, and they did a yeoman's job. And I can say this, that Barbara's staffers did a great job too, and we really worked well together. But she covered pretty much where we are on this thing, but the main reason I wanted to come down today, in spite of the fact that I'll be chairing that committee that is very significant, and most people in here will have an interest in that if you're interested in transportation, is that we should be starting right now and preparing for 5 years from now. You know, our tendency is always you get something done, and I was in on the. Barbara mentioned the largest one we had. That was 1998. I was there. I was an author. I was working in that legislation. We also had then 2005, and then we had the 27-month bill, and you remember that. That was hard to get through. My problem wasn't, as a conservative Republican, my problem wasn't the Democrats getting the votes for that. And I remember very well going down and having a lot of my fellow conservative Republicans demagoguing this thing. And not telling the truth. Because the truth is, if you just operate on extensions and you look at the cost of extensions, that's about 30% off the top. And so the conservative programs have a long-term reauthorization bill, and that's what we're committed to do. So we did that, and of course a lot of the Tea Party guys were out there, and they're all vying for the Club for Growth and all these people that rank everything that you do. And so I had that as a problem on the floor, and we were able to really sell enough of them to get the Republicans in on this. Then, right after that, we took that bill. This is the 27-month bill, just a few months ago, and Alex and I went over to the House. At my request, they put all 33 of the Republicans that are on the T&I committee together in one room, and I gave them this little talk about what the conservative position is. And after that, hours after that, they voted on our bill, and every one of the 33 Republicans voted for it. And a lot of those were Tea Party guys. So I'm telling you this story because if we start preparing now, we're going to be in a lot better shape. And if we don't do that, then we're going to get the closer to get to 5 years, and we're going to be right into the short-term extensions. And as you know, the short-term extensions, you can't do any big projects. You can't get any of the reforms. My gosh, Barbara gave into a lot of she tried harder than I thought she would on some of the reforms to streamline some of the programs that we have with the EPA, and it really did work. So it was a great thing. But it had to be done at the last minute, and we went several years after our last big bill, which was in 2005, and we've been operating on extension since then. So now's the time to get busy and start working with us. I talked to your group last year. This same group. I was your luncheon speaker, and I remember that so well. And some of you, I know you guys remember this well, because everyone's you know what the number one concern was at that time? It was devolution. Devolution. And here I was the father of devolution. The confession's good for the soul. And this actually happened to me back when I first was elected to the House of Representatives, and the first year I served was 1987. And at that time, we had people talking about devolution, and it sounds so good. You can go back to your state and you can say, why are we doing this? Why not just go ahead and repeal the federal taxes and pass the state taxes and do what we want to do in our state? Isn't that wonderful? And everyone cheers. It's a wonderful thing until you realize that it can't be done. And it can't be done because if you do that, you're assuming two things. First of all, you're assuming that all 50 contiguous states, all 48 contiguous states, are all going to pass a massive state tax increase, and that's not going to happen. I think we all know that. And secondly, we have some states, like Wyoming, they have lots of land and no people, so this is something that has to be done. It has to be done right. And so as we prepare now for, and that's why devolution did raise its head, and that was your major concern a year ago right now. and we made it very clear that we were not going to let that happen. And frankly, it never came up, even though everyone was campaigning on it in the field. So those are little challenges that we had that we overcame, and now we're in a position where we have to start planning, seeing what we're going to do for the future, and how to avoid coming up against a problem where we're not going to be able to get something done. So with that, I just want to thank you, because Barbara is right, and AASHTO, without you, we could not have done this. We had the greatest coalition, and I loved it early on in this coalition. This is actually a few years ago. We had 3 or 4 people. In fact, I belong to the most exclusive club in Washington. It's called United States Senators Who Are Not Running for President. And we had so many of them out there that were all running, and at that time they were trying to go home and say that all we're going to cut all the government spending and all that, until they got home. When they got home, they had to start facing the people at home about, said, well, you mean you would vote against funding for transportation? And they all said, oh, I wasn't talking about transportation. You see, you have that advantage because everybody wants good roads. It's the most popular approach that we can have. And so with that, and with the coalitions that are out there, and if we start right now, we're going to be in good position so that we're going to be able to hit the ground running and do what that old document called a Constitution tells us we ought to be doing, and we're all going to rejoice in that. Okay? Thank you very much.